He's a supervisor too. Same position as me.
Good morning, you guys. By the way, when that phone rings, I said it was 9 to ring up for 9 minutes, so there's a minute leeway in there. All right, and that way out. Anyway, it's a long story. How's everybody doing? All right, let's do this. Let's move on to chapter 6. Now, chapter 6 deals with inventory. Okay. Now, for those of you that were around during the first Gulf War, what happened? It doesn't seem like that long ago, but it, maybe ancient history for some of you guys. But anyway, this doesn't seem that long ago, right? So what happened is they fired that first shot, and on my way to work, I stopped by the gas station, and the gas had jumped up immediately. Okay. There's some cynicism here, I can sense it, but listen, put the cynicism aside. Why did they do that? It's because the gas companies were charging replacement costs. So the gas that I was actually putting in my tank had come out of the ground several weeks earlier, because it came out of the ground, it went through some sort of processing, went through some sort of transportation, was stored, and then it was put on a ship, and then the ship literally went halfway around the world, and then it went in storage and processing and all that, weeks, right? And yet, my gas went up a minute, it's because they were basing their selling price on replacement costs. Now, their replacement costs did go up instantaneously when that first shot was fired, right? So it did go up instantaneously. So the name for that is called LIFO. And LIFO stands for last in, first out, okay? And for an oil company, LIFO works well because they have these wildly fluctuating prices depending on international crises, okay? And so with LIFO, what you have is recent costs are in cost of goods sold, and oldest costs are in ending inventory. So again, when they fired the shot, their income statement was based on what they were currently paying. So the name for that is recent cost. What was still in the pipeline should have been ending inventory. So to get a better idea of this, let me show you how this works. So why don't I do quick study 6-6. You find that on page 256. Now, I chose LIFO because what I'm trying to demonstrate here is what we're worried about, what we're concerned with valuing inventory is costing, not the actual flow of goods, right? And in this case, the flow of costs is the opposite of the flow of goods. So let me put this on the board. I'll turn out the light so that it's more readable. I think if I go this way, it'll be the fastest. I'll turn the camera around. So in this case, what we have is, so it's 6-6, page 256. So here it is. Now what it does is it asks you to go back to 6-5, which is in the bottom of the previous page, and use that information under the LIFO system. So here's the information. I'm going to fold this in half because it'll position better on the screen. It's 6-5 down here at the bottom. Let me make it more readable, make it larger, more readable. So here's what we have, okay? So Mercedes Brown starts a merchandising business on December 1st and enters the 3 inventory purchases. So, on December 7th, she bought 10 units, paid $9 each. On the 14th, she bought 20 units, paid $10 each. On the 21st, she bought 15 units at $12 each. She sold 18 units for $35 on December 15th. So the sale happened after the 14th and the 21st. This happened in there, okay? Now, what she wants you to do is determine the cost assigned to the ending inventory. And this is FIFO, but we'll do LIFO because we're doing the next problem. So we're looking for the value of the ending inventory, okay? So let me kind of show you how this works. So it's LIFO. So in this case, we have these columns. So here's the columns that we'll be working with. We have a date column. Let me use my planer pen. I think it should work better on this thing. And also, I'm going to make this the same size as the screen so I don't end up writing outside the viewing area. Okay. So we have a date column here. We have a purchase column. We have cost of goods sold. And we have inventory balance. And these are columns headings. So, the way this works is, and this is 6-6. Here's 6-6, okay? So, the first thing we do here is on December 7th, we bought 10 units at $9 each. So it'll be 12/7. We bought 10 units at $9 each for $90. There was no sale, so there's no cost of goods sold. The balance at this point is 10 times 90, so we have $90 in inventory. Then on 12/14, what you did is you bought 20 units, and that's this one right here. You bought 20 units at $10 each for $200, and now your inventory has 10 at 9, okay, and that's bringing it down. It has 20 at 10, and the whole thing is worth $290, okay? So this goes there, that comes down, and that's your inventory worth $290. Does that make sense? Now, on the 15th, you have a sale. On the 15th, you sell 18 units, okay? So 12/15. So we sell 18 units. So now because it's LIFO, that means last in, first out. That means that all 18 units that we sold came from this purchase. And they're at $10 each, so our cost of goods sold is $180. What's left now will be all 10 from our original purchase, 2 from our second purchase, and the inventory is worth $110. And it's because last in, first out, the last ones we bought are the ones we're selling. The original ones are still in inventory. So all 18 that we sold, this is cost of goods sold up here, right? All 18 that we sold came out of this purchase, and they're valued at $10. Okay, does that make sense? Then, so this is LIFO, 6-6. Then on 12/21, we have another purchase, okay? And we purchased 15 units at $12 each for $180. Now, our inventory at the end has 10 units that are valued at $9, 2 units that are valued at $10, 15 units that are valued at $12, and the value of the ending inventory is $290, and this is the answer. So be sure to read the question carefully, because if it said how much is the cost of goods sold, it would have been $180. What it asks is, what's the value of the ending inventory, which is $290. You guys doing good on that? That makes sense? All right, now, it said she sold the 18 units for $35 each. Where does the $35 come up in this thing? It doesn't, because everything's valued at cost, only the cost is what we're worried about here. Okay, that sound about right? And then the rest of this, where 7 came from December and all that, that will be used in a different problem. So you guys doing good? All right, let's do this then. Why don't you guys do Quick Study 6.2, and you find that on page 255. And it does the same thing, that it refers you back to another problem and asks you to use that data. So let's take a look here. This is here it is, 255, okay? So it refers you back to 6.2, which is this one right here, and 6.2 says go back to 6.1, except do it under the LIFO system. And what they're asking for is the value of the ending inventory, okay? So in this case, what we have here then is, let me make this a little bigger. Let me take away stuff we're not going to use. So a company reports the following beginning inventory and purchases for the month of January. On January 26th, they sell 360 units. What is the cost of the ending inventory? So in this case, the beginning inventory has 320 units in it, and they pay $6. They cost $6 each. They purchased on January 9th. They purchased 85 units, paid $6.40 each. On the 25th, they purchased another 110 units at $6.60, and then on the 26th, which happens after our last purchase, they sold 360 units, and they want to know the value of the ending inventory. So let me turn you loose with that. And I'll put up the answers. And again, you'll have the same 3 columns as we had before, 4 columns as we had before. you guys. Let me put the answers up there and see what questions you have. And again, everything's at cost. The fact that they sold them for,
Does it
they don't
say-
tell you what they sold them for, but whatever they sold them for is just not relevant. It's all at cost. We're valuing inventory. And be careful, if they ask for the cost of goods sold, it would be 2,260. They ask for the ending inventory, which they do ask for, it's 930. So be sure to read that carefully. Get that out of your way. I just parked it there because it was, I just wanted to see if I could. Okay. All right, let's see what questions there are. People are still taking notes. I'm going to go ahead and adjust this camera so we're ready for the next thing that comes up.
Where'd you get the 165 at $6?
I think that's 160.
Okay, so it's last in, first out. So what it boils down to is this, so what they did is that when they sold 360 units, right?
Uh-huh.
So 110 came from
The last.
the last purchase,
Uh-huh.
85 came from the next purchase, there was 165 left to make 360.
For the
first
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so what it is you add 85 to 110, you subtract that from 360, you get 165. It's whatever brings it up to the 360.
Why is it $6?
Because what it comes from here. Exactly, so don't forget, last in, first out, so you work backwards.
So you use up everything from the 25th, and then you continue to the 9th, and then work your way to the top, basically.
Exactly. But listen, Cameron, don't forget, now that's under the LIFO system.
Uh-huh.
Now, when we do FIFO, it'll be the reverse.
Alright.
But under the LIFO system, you charge replacement cost, right? So if you're something like an oil company where the costs just fluctuate all over the place, whatever they're currently paying is they're currently charging, that's what they basically charge their sales on.
Alright.
And it's based on whatever they're currently paying. And the advantage is with wildly fluctuating prices, that'll do it.
Alright.
And then, of course, with an oil, they're based on political crises. So that, that just works out well for that. All right, you guys doing good? All right. Looks like most people are done with that. Let me go ahead and leave that up there. So listen, LIFO, last in, first out. What do you think FIFO stands for? First in, first out. Now, I started with LIFO because I wanted to make the point that we're talking about the flow of costs, not the flow of goods. How many people are still taking notes? Am I rushing here? Let me just kind of check with you guys. Am I rushing? All right. Well, let me go ahead and do this. I think I'm on pace. So, I chose LIFO because I just wanted to make the point, we're talking about costs, we're not talking about the actual flow of goods. If you want a mnemonic device for this, what they do in Minnesota, they put salt on the roads in the winter, right? So what they do is they have these bins, and they fill the bins with salt during the summer, and then winter comes, they then empty the bins to fill the trucks. And so, last in, first out, because they start from the top and go down. Does that make sense? So they fill the bins in the summer, and then they empty the bins in the winter, so they just scoop it out and scoop it into a truck. So if you want to if you want to somehow a mnemonic device to remember it, you may just think of that, and that's LIFO. Now FIFO. FIFO, of course, stands for first in, first out. And this parallels the flow of goods, right? This just parallels the flow of goods. So the flow of goods and the flow of costs by accident are the same in this case. So what it means is the fact that, I'm going to put this here. So now, it means that The oldest costs are in the cost of goods sold. So the first ones you bought are the ones you're selling. That's normally what happens. Okay? So the oldest cost are in the cost of goods sold. And the recent costs are still in inventory. And so, by coincidence, with FIFO, the flow of goods and the flow of costs are the same. Okay? All right. So why don't I do quick study? I'll just write it up here and get out of your way. Quick study 6-5, page 256. You know, you guys are pretty sharp. Should I just turn you loose on that and give you the feedback? That may be better. Because I think you guys are sharp. All right? So let me read it so that everybody or who's at home know how we're doing. And then I'll just give you feedback. And so this is FIFO. And so it's 6-5, page 255. So what it does is it's the one we worked with before. Okay. So in this case, it's the one we just finished working with. It's the one I demonstrated with. So don't forget, this is where Mercedes Brown sells merchandise. She has 3 purchases: December 7th, 10 at 9, December 14th, 20 at 10, December 21st. She bought 15 at 12. She sold 18 units on December 15th, so the sale is in here. And again, what's the value of the ending inventory? And this will be the reverse of the one we just did.
She sold 18 and C stuff, and so we had to.
So it would be 2 times 10. Give it to
You guys let me put up the answers, give you a chance to look it over, and see what questions there are. Give you a minute to look that over, and then let's talk about it. You guys, let me kind of walk you through this. So what we did is, when we made this sale on the 15th, under the LIFO system, okay? What we did is, we figured the cost of goods sold, so that's first in, first out. So when we sold 18 units, we sold all 10 of our first purchase, first in, first out. That's 10 times 9. We sold 18, so there's 8 left, and the remaining 8 come from our second purchase. Okay, so that's our cost of goods sold. So when we sold 8 from the second purchase, the remaining 12 are still in inventory. And then, when we bought 15 for 12, we carried forward the inventory. We added the 15 and 12 for a total of 300, and this is the answer. Does that make sense? All right, let's go ahead. Now that we learned how to do that, let's practice it one time. So let's go back up here to the one we worked with and use this to do FIFO. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're doing, we're doing it. It says do FIFO. So in January 30th, this one we worked with before, I'll leave this up here as a template. So in January 31st, assuming costs are assigned based on perpetual inventory system, we use the FIFO, round per unit cost to 3 decimal places in the payment. All right, I'm going to leave this here for a template. guess I kind of got a column in the middle. It looks like half the class is done or so, so let me put up the answers, give you a minute to look at it, and then we'll talk about it. So in this case, when they made the sale on the 25th, all 110 came out of the first purchase, right? So 110 times 660, that'll be the cost of goods sold, okay? Or actually, no, I'm sorry, the purchase was down here. So when they sold the 360, they sold all these 320, there were 40 left, and so the 40 came out of this purchase. So they sold all 320 at $6. And then there were 40 left, the 40 came out of here, 40 times 640, so here's your cost of goods sold. If they took 40 out of here, there's 45 left, okay? And all 110 of those are left, and this is what they're asking for. Sure, yeah, Liz?
And actually going back to the previous one, we did like quick study 6.5.
Okay,
So even though in the problem it tells us how many of each were sold on which purchase date, we still have to go all of them. Because on the 6.5 it says that she sold 18, but 7 were from the 77
Okay.
purchase.
Yeah, and what it is that we'll deal with that information when we deal with the specific identification method. So, that'll come up, that'll just come up later.
Okay.
And it's, again, well, maybe, what I'll do is I'll rearrange it. I was going to do the weighted average, but I'll do the specific identification method now, and you'll see how that works.
Okay.
Okay. Now, how's everybody doing with the, with FIFO? Are you guys doing good? All right, doing good? All right. If you're doing okay with that, then let's go on to the specific identification method. And Liz, I think this will answer your question well. So let me move this over here. Okay. I'm going to turn on a light. Let me take a look here. We rearrange the order of these things. And we do the specific identification method. Okay. So with the specific identification method, here's how it works. So essentially, let's just kind of have an overview here so we see where everything's at. There's 4 commonly used ways to value inventory. There's LIFO, there's FIFO, there's weighted average, we'll get to that in a minute. And there's specific identification method. So there's 4 ways. We did LIFO, we did FIFO. Let's go on to specific identification method. Now you can use any one of the 4, but once you choose one, you got to keep using it. Okay? Now on the specific identification method, here's how this works is. LIFO and FIFO work when you're selling a whole bunch of the same thing, like oil, right? However, what happens if you have an antique store where every item you sell has a unique price? This antique clock, this antique chair, this antique whatever, right? They all have a unique price. In that case, you have to use a specific identification method. And when you sell that, what goes into cost of goods sold is what you paid for it specifically. Okay? So let me just kind of elaborate on this one. If you go into an antique store, a lot of times they'll bargain with you, right? So if they bargain with you, they have to know what to do it effectively, they have to know how much they paid for it. So if they stop above that amount, they'll make a profit. If they go below that amount, they'll do a loss. Now sometimes you got to do a loss just because you got to get rid of this darn thing because nobody's bought it for the last year. But do it with your eyes open, how much you're going to lose. So they have to know what they paid for it. So here's a code that's commonly used. So here we have the tic-tac-toe board, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So if they have a tag, and the tag has these symbols on it, how much do you think they paid for it? $123.
What do you use for zero?
Just,
Just a zero.
yeah. And that way, it's easy to remember, easy to understand, and they'll, when they bargain with you, they have a basis to know how to bargain. And all I'm trying to do here is point out that we're talking about the specific identification method. And when they sell that, this is the dollar amount that goes into cost of goods sold. Okay? Now, you guys are pretty sharp. Any questions, anything? Let's do this. I was originally going to do it, but you guys are sharp enough, there's no need for me to do it. I'll be glad to if you want. Why don't we do quick study 6-8, and you find that on page 256, and this is the exact thing you were talking about, Liz. And again, what the cost of you enter for every specific item you enter that specific cost, okay? And and of course that's the one you have to use. And then what we'll do is we'll do the weighted average next. Okay? So I'm going to turn out the lights and put it on the board so our viewers at home will know where we're at. And so what it does is 6-8 will refer you back to 6-5, okay? Here's 6-5, and then value the ending inventory based on in this case, I think they must ask for the cost of goods sold. Let's take a look and see what 6-8 does say. So what it says is, refer to quick study 6-5 and assume the perpetual inventory system used to determine the cost assigned to the ending inventory when costs are assigned on a specific unit identification. So what they tell you is they tell you what's sold, right? And so you have to know what's left. So in this case, what they do is they tell you that 7 units are sold from the December. So if they sold 7, they have 3 left. And with that hint, let me turn you loose. I'll put up the answers for discussion in a minute. You guys, half people are done, let me put the answers up here. So, they originally had 10 in the December purchase, they sold 3, or they sold 7, so 3 are left. They had 20 in the December 14th, and 11 were sold, so that means that 9 are left. And then, all 15 from the December 31st purchase are there. So this is the value of your inventory, is what's left. Okay, and of course, if you're looking for your cost of goods sold, it would be 7 times 9 plus 11 times 10 would be the cost of goods sold, but it's whatever that specific unit costs you. All right, so let's go on to the weighted average. Now, I think the best way of doing this one is, let me show you one, and then you guys can practice one. So the weighted average. Now, the weighted average just takes an average. And for what in terms of it's widely used, in fact, is the default in QuickBooks. QuickBooks by default uses the weighted average method to value inventory. Okay? So let me do Quick Study 6-7. So I'll do Quick Study 6-7. Now what that'll do is it'll refer us back to 6.5, but let me just kind of show you what it's asking for. So Quick Study 6-7, what it says is, refer to Quick Study 6.5, assume the perpetual inventory system, determine the costs assigned to ending inventory when costs are assigned based on a weighted average. Okay? So here's 6.5, this one right here. Let's base it on weighted average. So, let me put this here. Actually, I haven't got a page here. Okay. And it's 6.7. So, in this case, what we have here then, and I'm going to make the paper the same size as the screen so I don't write out of view. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. So you guys ready? All right. So here it is. It's 6.7. So I won't put the column headings because we must be familiar with them. So on 12.7, they bought 10 units at $9 each for $90. There's no cost of goods sold. The ending inventory has 10 units at $9 each for $90. Now, you guys want me to let me put in the column headings. I think that makes it easier to understand. Date, purchases, cost of goods sold, and inventory. Balance. Now, on 12/14, they purchased 20 units at $10 each for $200. So now, what they have is over here in the inventory balance, they have 10 at $9 each, okay, and they have 20 at $10 each. That means the inventory is valued at $290. Does that make sense? Here's the 90, there's the 200, so it's 290. Does that make sense? And they have 10 plus 20, they have 30 units in there. So that means the average cost per unit is 9.667. Okay? So they have, the value is a total of 290, 10 times 9, 20 times 10. They have 30 units in the ending inventory. That means the average cost is 9.667. Does that make sense? Now, on the 15th, they have a sale. And they sell 18 units. And the cost of goods sold will be 18 times 9.667. So that means that the cost of goods sold will be $174. And they have 12 units left, times 9.667. So the value of the ending inventory is $116. So there's 12, so they sold 18, they had 30, so there's 12 left. And the value of those 12 is 116 because it's times the average. Does that make sense? Then on 12/21, they bought another 15 at 12 for 180. Now the ending inventory. It has 12 units at 9.667. It has 15 units at $12. The value of these two together is $296. They have a total of 27 units, 12 plus 15. So we divide this by 27, and the average cost is 10.963. That's the average cost. Does that make sense?